Wyn Thomas's Drive Time, now playing worldwide.
On 106.5 FM and online, it's the After 5 Guest with Wyn Thomas.
And time now for my After 5 guest today. I'm actually delighted to be meeting up with Carwyn Jones, former First Minister. Carwyn, thanks for your company this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on, Wyn. Fantastic.
So on to the book, Not Just Politics. You've been Bridgend-based for most of your life, but really, you're a Swansea boy, aren't you?
Well, I was born in Swansea. I was born in Morriston, but there's a tale behind that, Wyn. I was meant to be born there. My mother and father are both from Brynaman and Amman Valley, and they wanted me to be born in Carmarthenshire, so I was meant to be born in the Amman Valley Hospital in Glanamman, but I was too troublesome, and my mother was put in the back of an ambulance and taken down to Morriston, where things were very difficult. We made it through, but that's the reason I think why there was only one of me. My mother didn't get such a difficult experience the first time around. That was enough for her.
I guess you were born in those old wartime wards in Morriston Hospital, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I remember them. I mean, you went down a slope.
That's right, yeah.
I remember. It was quite slope there. They were almost like, they looked like air raid shelters almost. And my father tells the tale. It shows how long ago it is, right? That my grandfather and him spent all night smoking outside the wall, waiting for news to see if the baby had been delivered. Those are the days, eh?
In those little waiting rooms on the slope, yes, yeah.
They were little cutches, weren't they? Off to the side of the slope, and you could just sort of go in there and sit down. Yeah, it was a strange design, wasn't it?
Oh, and the delivery ward was something out of some horror movie. I remember that as well.
Yeah.
So, is the miners' strike of 1984 that got you politically interested in politics?
It did, Wyn. I was in the sixth form at the time, and I grew up in Bridgend. Bridgend wasn't a mining town, but just to the north of Bridgend, you still had 3 working collieries. And of course, the Abernant pit was still open between Rhydyfro there and Cwmgors, and that was the local pit for Brynaman and all those villages. And my uncle had been underground. One of my grandfathers was underground, great uncles underground. And you could see the effect on mining communities. And of course, you then saw the effect when the pits went, because they employed a lot of men. They were good jobs, well paid, and nothing was put in place to try to lessen the impact of pit closures. I just didn't like what I saw. What I saw was a government, to my mind, acting against its own people.
Bridgend never had mines, as you say, but great factories, especially remembered for the wartime arsenals, weren't they?
That's right. I mean, Bridgend had a very small population until the war. I think it was 7,000. It was basically a market town, a bit like Cowbridge. And then a big munitions plant was built in the war. 37,000, mainly women, worked there. And that became one of the first industrial estates after the war. And Sony were there, a very big factory. Ford came later, of course, and it's still a big industrial estate with a lot of employers in it. So the town really, it was almost like a new town, It was a small core that was an agricultural town with a cattle market in the middle that then became what used to be called a light industrial town with a lot of different employers. And a lot of people moved into Bridgend as well from all over Wales, particularly. When I was in school, my best mates, none of us had parents from Bridgend.
Right.
They were all from outside, all moved in.
Mm-hmm. And those wartime arsenal annex, as it became at Bank Farm, it became a prisoner of war camp later on.
Well, no, the prisoner of war camp was on a different site. Well, there were 2 prisoner of war camps. One was for officers, Island Farm, and the other one was for NCOs. That was out in Pencoed.
Right, I see. Right.
Where Starbucks and McDonald's and Lloyd's Bank are in Pencoed. There was one there. But the one in Bridgend was along the bypass road. And one of the huts is still there. That's 9. Yeah. And it's been preserved, and there are people who look after it. And they had the biggest breakout of German officers. I think 70 of them broke out at one time, and they were all recaptured. They didn't get very far.
So now, being a very experienced politician, on reflection, going back to the 1984 strike of the miners, would a national ballot have helped to satisfy the victory for the miners?
Yes, no doubt about that. Tactically, it wasn't brilliant in my view. If there'd been a ballot and the ballot had come out with a yes vote for a strike, I think that would have made it a lot more solid. Now, people have said to me, no, the Nottinghamshire miners would still not have come out on strike. But we won't know the answer to that question. But undoubtedly, it would have been easier to present to the wider public if there'd been a ballot and that ballot had come out in favour of a strike. So that was, I think, a difficulty in terms of the way the rest of Wales and the rest of Britain looked at the strike.
So devolution gave you an opportunity to become something you might never have achieved then, Carwyn.
Well, I suppose people have different paths to politics. I mean, one of the things I found is most politicians, it doesn't matter which party they're in, most politicians come into politics with the best of intentions. They want to make a difference, a positive difference to the people in the communities that they serve. They're in a minority who are not like that. But every job is like that. And for me, that was my pathway, as it were. I didn't come from a particularly political family. Mm-hmm. One of my grandfathers had been an election agent for Plaid Cymru in the 50s, but I was never attracted to Plaid Cymru particularly, and joined a lot of young people say to me, if you look to join a political party, you have to agree with everything it says. And the answer is no. You form your views first, and then you look for a party that's closest to your views. You can never agree with everything, and that's what I did when I was 18. The Labour Party was closest to my views.
So when Rodney Morgan, the late, great Rodney Morgan, said he was going to retire, did you instantly fancy the job as First Minister, or were you persuaded to try for it?
Look, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I fancied it. Yes, I did. I did want to go for the job. Now, it's one thing to want to try for a job. It's another thing to have any realistic prospect of having it. So you do need other people to tell you that you're a viable candidate, and people did. You can't be such an egotist that you think you're going to be. You think you're good enough for a job, but actually no one else does. So yes, it's a bit of both really. But there's no point me saying, oh yes, I was persuaded to do it, I was pushed into it. No, I did want to do it, but I did have people saying to me, you should go for it, you could do it. You do need that as well.
During those terms, in the book, you said you always helped to try and publicise Wales. Did you feel that was lacking in previous First Ministers then?
No, it was a long old haul. I mean, you've got to remember that we didn't have the kind of international profile the Scots did. We didn't have tartan and bagpipes and whiskey in those days anyway, and all the things that people identify with Scotland. We didn't have Guinness. We didn't have the things people identify. We didn't have millions of people living in America of Irish descent for a start. So we didn't have that. So we had to start from a much lower base, and that meant going around telling people about Wales, because if people haven't heard of you, they're not going to invest and bring jobs. They're not going to visit as tourists and bring money. So that was something we had to do.
Or be told that's England.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The way that's changed has been through sport.
Yeah.
The Ryder Cup, Champions League final. The fact we had Rugby Union, Rugby League World Cups, and the Euros. The Euros in 2016 were huge for us. The football team did more than any politician could possibly do.
Mm-hmm.
For a long, long time, I tell people I was First Minister of a country called Wales, Gareth Bale. When you say Wales, Gareth Bale, oh yes, they knew then.
It used to be Tom Jones or Carwyn.
It used to be, yeah, but our profile now has never been higher. You go to the States now, for example, and people have heard of Wales. Well, I know a lot about this, but they make the distinction now in a way that was never the case before, and that's good for us, because when people come now to American tourists, when they come to Europe, they tend to be people who've retired, they've saved up a long time, they want to make a big trip, and they want to tick off countries as they go. And it was always England, Scotland, Ireland. They never came to Wales. That's changing now. They want to tick Wales off as a separate country, and of course that means they stay in Wales, they spend money in Wales, and hopefully, they enjoy good hospitality, and they go back and tell other people in America.
But you also
go to Wales, it's a great country.
Sorry, you also opened a lot of offices around the world, didn't you, to sort of publicise it even more?
Yeah, we had. What we did was we opened offices that were offices that represented Wales, but we targeted them. We weren't trying to replicate what the UK government does. We haven't got those resources, and we want to try to do that. But there were some cities where having a distinct Welsh presence was important. Washington's one example. We have several offices now in North America. The US is by far our biggest investor, and they're all run from Washington. And the difference it makes, for example, is that we were able through that office to organise every year a Welsh reception in the US Congress on Capitol Hill around about St David's Day.
Right.
And that grew and grew. So we got several hundred people there. It was becoming an event. And of course, again, that helps to raise the profile of Wales. It wasn't just politicians. We had people that were in the business there. And that helped to raise Wales's profile as well. But you can't just have an event. You've got to have people on the ground 365 days a year who are going to build on a successful event. You can't just say, here we are, we'll see you again next year. It doesn't work that way.
Right, I see. Okay. So you've mentioned that your family were connected to Plaid Cymru. So when you were First Minister, you found yourself in a coalition with Plaid Cymru. Was that tough?
Well, no, because I've been in that coalition, as part of it since 2007. I mean, it was set up in 2007. I came into it then in 2009, so I was familiar with the people I was dealing, the ministers I was dealing with at Plaid Cymru and their staff. So it wasn't difficult to slip in to Rodri's place in that sense in terms of the coalition. Right,
okay. Now, in the book, you mentioned your wife's health problems before and after becoming First Minister. So did you think about resigning due to the second health problems?
There were occasions when it crossed my mind, if I'm honest with you, yeah. My wife's she's tough as nails with all the things she's gone through.
Oh, yes, yeah.
When she was 29, had a bone marrow transplant. That was the best part of a year. She then had a problem with her heart in her late 30s, which it looked like a heart attack. It wasn't. But one of the drugs she had to take as part of the chemotherapy for leukemia is known to affect, well, it wasn't known then, but it's known to affect the heart. So that gave a heart failure. And then on top of that, she had another problem just before the 2016 election where I almost lost her, if I'm honest, over it was a kidney problem, and she was taking very strong painkillers for a slipped disc, and her kidneys couldn't get rid of the painkillers quickly enough, and she didn't do it. She wasn't well at all, put it that way. She was rushed into hospital, and for a couple of hours it was touch and go. But she always bounced back, and there are occasions when you think to yourself, especially when the kids were little. My kids, they only ever knew me as a minister. There are occasions in your life when you think, am I really being fair now here? Because I've got young children, I've got a wife who's not very well, but we always discussed it as a family, and it was something that we always, they always said, you've got to carry on. But I'll be honest with you, it shortened my time as First Minister because I came in 2009, I thought, well, 10 years, if I can do 10 years, I'd be lucky. It's a nice target. But I knew by 2017, I'd done 8 years. I thought, if I go for 10, I'm just doing it to reach the target. And that's no good for anybody, including Wales. I don't want somebody who's just not, putting notches on a door to try and reach 10 years. And I decided that it would be 2018 that I go. That 9 years would be right for it for the family, for myself, and also for the country, because it gave Mark as my successor an extra year to bed in. Although I'm not sure he's thanking me very much for dealing with over the past few months.
No, I thought that when I asked you the first question. Yeah, but I have to ask you: was the Carl Sargent affair was a blight on the final parts of your First Ministers? That didn't stop you sort of resigning before the 10 years? And did that help you to sort of make that decision?
Well, I take the decision the summer of 2017. It was November that we lost Carl.
Yeah.
And I have to say to you, it was of course a tragedy for the family. And people have said to me, would I have done anything different? Well, the answer is no. The only way I could have approached this differently would be to ignore the written complaints of women who come forward, and nobody could have done that. Nobody would have wanted, of course, to see the outcome. But there was a lot of the number of knives I had in the back from various people who were basically revisiting grudges from years ago. That did weigh me down, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But I take the decision before that, because what happened was there'd been a reshuffle in November 2017. That was a bit earlier than people expected. Well, that was because I was going to go a year earlier than people expected.
Okay.
But obviously, nobody would have chosen to have what happened in the last year of my time in the job. Of course not.
Right. Okay. So all those allegations, some of them were made up, some of them weren't made up. Are you guys saying that now?
Oh, I don't think any of the allegations are made up. No. far from it. The allegations, I had to deal with 3 allegations at the beginning. There were more afterwards, and 2 of which were in writing. So when people come forward, there has to be an investigation. The same way as if people give the police statements, the police don't say, "Well, no, I'm not doing anything at all." There has to be an investigation, and that there was no avoiding that. That had to be done. The only way to avoid it, that would have been to ignore the complaints that came forward, and no responsible person could do that.
So none of them were made up. They were all virtually true then.
Well, look,
I know you can't say much about it now.
I don't think it's my position to judge.
No.
But what I can tell you is I had allegations in writing, and as a result of that, I had to take action.
Okay.
But, making a judgment, I don't think is fair on anybody, let alone the family.
No, of course not. No, and Carl is not here anymore to sort of answer those allegations. Yeah. There we are then. Well, thanks so much for being my guest today. And say good luck with the book. Hope it sells. And thanks so much for being my After 5 guest today.
It's been my great pleasure, Wyn. Thank you.
Thank you indeed.